So, good morning, everyone. I'm Jim Mills. Most of you probably know me or have heard of me. I'm part of the consortium that's running Breathe London. My responsibility is mainly quality assurance and the early part of identifying and working with the boroughs to identify sites for the deployment. So, yes, I'm going to talk about black carbon and carbon dioxide today. But I also wanted to add in some things that we're thinking about on network expansion. So we'll cover that first very briefly. I've also got some news on the Oxford Street pedestrianisation scheme, which is also going to be monitored by the Breathe London network. And then we'll talk a little bit about the carbon dioxide and black carbon initiatives as well. So, sorry, can you actually see my camera shots there, or can you see the slide clearly?
We can see the slide.
That's fine. Good. I just wondered whether it was sharing that as well and blocking off some of the text. No problem. So at the moment, we are and have always been seeking to expand the network beyond its 130 odd monitoring locations at the moment. We have an offer on the website for community groups and others within the city to purchase additional sensors. But we want to take that a little bit further. So in consultation with the GLA, we are shortly going to be offering boroughs within the city the opportunity to procure additional sensors through the Breathe London deal that GLA have negotiated, which is based on a lease rather than a purchase of sensors. And those prices are really quite competitive compared to everything else that's out there. So what we're trying to do is encourage London boroughs who are considering buying sensors or leasing sensors to actually do so through this mechanism, which will get you the kind of bulk pricing which the GLA enjoyed when they procured the network. The third way, of course, of expanding the network is to look at some of the sensors which are already out there. We already heard this morning, from Carol that she's got, I think you said about 30 sensors, Carol, already running. What we're trying to do at the moment is build a program where we can affiliate those sensors into the Breathe London network. So you'd still be running your own network, you'd still have control of the data, but we would be able to bring that data into the Breathe London network and apply some quality assurance and calibration capability to help boroughs manage their networks. There's a small fee involved in doing that, of course, but we hope that it's actually going to work out cheaper than what you're probably spending at the moment to do that either through manufacturers or consultants or with your own efforts. That's not restricted to early sensors, which are the sensors that we use in the network. Any sensor which meets the criteria for affiliation, which we'll be publishing on the website shortly, can be brought into the network. So we would encourage boroughs to think about whether or not there is an advantage in sharing your data with the Breathe London network, and of course, getting all of that additional data into the network so that we can share it with you. Let me carry on now to Oxford Street. Most of you will have heard that the Oxford Street pedestrianisation scheme has enjoyed some pretty strong support from the public, and I believe that in the early part of next year, the Oxford Street Development Corporation will be set up. The scheme itself is hoped to be in place by May 2028. So we have already deployed several Breathe London monitors along the route. A couple of them are on Vodafone shop fronts. Some of them are on street furniture and at junctions, which we've agreed with TfL at the various key junctions along the route. What we're hoping to do is to get a fairly good idea of what air quality looks like before, during and after the implementation of the pedestrianisation scheme. This map shows you some of the locations. Forget about all the green dots. They're all the sort of lampposts that were considered. The yellow ones are where we're actually going or already are installed. And the two red dots are the Vodafone stores on Oxford Street, quite strategically placed so that we can actually follow the path of the air quality changes. I mean, these changes, even with the pedestrianisation scheme, are likely to be fairly subtle. And the weather will always conspire against us, but we have some cunning plans, which I'll talk about a little bit now, in terms of CO2, which will play into this scheme of monitoring the changes in air quality over the period. So, segueing into CO2 now, a lot of people ask me, why do we bother measuring CO2? It's a greenhouse gas, it's not a criteria pollutant from an air quality point of view. And there's 400 ppm of it floating around in the background anyway, so why is it important? Well, it's important because every type of fossil fuel or biomass fuel that we burn creates CO2. And the amount of pollutants like CO, SO2, NO, NO2, and PM that accompany the production of that CO2 are what we are generally interested in as air quality people. The ratio of those pollutants to the CO2 tells us how clean the combustion is. And every kind of fuel and every kind of combustion process will create a different ratio of CO2 to those criteria pollutants. So by measuring CO2 and looking at that ratio, we can calculate emissions indices, or if you like, a fingerprint of how clean or dirty the combustion process actually is. And if you do that over a period of time, you can look at how the fleet of vehicles on the roads are changing. You can look at how domestic burning is changing. You can look at a whole range of things. Because the nice thing about the ratio, rather than just looking at the PM concentration or the NO2 concentration alone, is that when the weather changes, we get high winds, the ratio stays the same. Whereas the winds will blow away the pollution off to somewhere else, but the ratio stays the same. So we can actually pick out emission indices over long periods of time and see how sources are changing. And that's an incredibly interesting thing to be able to do. I think at one of the previous workshops, Dr. Lekan Papola from Cambridge talked about how we separate local from background signals for all of the pollutants that we're measuring in Breathe London. And once we've done that local separation, we can apply it to the CO2 and to the NO2 or PM measurements. And what that allows us to do is to actually calculate these emission indices very locally. So you can see here that in these slides, we're talking about a fairly significant proportion of the NO2 is emitted locally, but there is a significant background. In this case, for this particular period of time, this was way back in the early days of the Breathe London pilot. Then you can see that the NO2 local contribution was still significant. The CO2 that accompanies that is actually telling us about the combustion that's happening locally that's actually producing that NO2. So by looking at that ratio, and we're doing this continuously amongst the consortium, we're able to provide boroughs with feedback as to what these sources look like and how they're changing over time. I was just thinking about the conversation you were having about the relevance of engaging with Breathe London as London boroughs. Maybe this is the kind of information that would actually be more interesting to the boroughs, maybe not quite so interesting to the public. But if this is something that you're interested in, please reach out to us through the help desk and we can share some of these insights with you. Moving on finally now to black carbon. Black carbon is a term which I'm sure you're very familiar with. However, it's quite often misused as well. I've heard it referred to as soot. Soot is actually quite different from black carbon. And within black carbon measurements, which is what I'm focused on at the moment, as part of the campaign for Clean Air Night, we are actually going to be interested in looking at the elemental part of the black carbon and the organic carbon that sits on the surface and impregnates the black carbon elemental particles. Because again, the ratio of elemental and organic carbon changes depending on the fuel and the type of combustion. And it just so happens that wood burning has a very significant fingerprint, which we can identify by looking at the black carbon split between elemental and organic. And we do that by using different wavelength optical detection methods. What I've been able to do this year is to identify manufacturers of black carbon instruments who are interested in getting behind the GAP Clean Air Night campaign, which is also supported by the GLA. Why is it important? Because domestic burning of biomass is actually a significant source of black carbon. And unlike a lot of other pollutants, for example, CO2, if we act on CO2 today, it will be decades before we actually see the benefits, because CO2 stays in the atmosphere for a long period of time. Black carbon particles only stay in the atmosphere for an average of up to 2 weeks. So therefore, if we can do something about reducing black carbon sources now, we get an immediate benefit. And black carbon is secondary only to CO2 in terms of climate change. So here's an opportunity for the boroughs on the call to get involved in this campaign directly, because what we've been able to do is procure a number of fixed and portable black carbon monitors, which we're going to deploy during this winter period. These have been donated by the manufacturers free of charge. They're also going to be installing them and managing them. But we need to house them within reference monitoring sites. And we would like you to try and help identify any areas within your borough where you believe wood burning is a problem, and where you have space within your existing monitoring station to house one of these monitors. They're standard 19-inch rack type monitors. They need one power supply socket. That's really all we need to house one of these things. We don't need to make any holes in the roof. The analysis of black carbon and the way that we're doing it with these monitors can come in through an air vent in the site. So there's no sort of works involved in modifying your monitoring sites. We just literally need access for an hour to make the installation, and those would run right through until the spring of next year at least. We also have some portable and personal black carbon monitors that we're going to look to work with GAP to deploy inside homes of people with and without wood burners, so that we can gather that information in terms of exposure and try and use this to help educate the public. So if you would like to take part in the black carbon campaign this winter, please get in touch with me by phone, by email, or through the help desk, or if you like, pop it onto the chat in this call, and we will reach back out to you in terms of the logistics of deploying these monitors. I think there's an enormous amount of information to be had, which of course we'll share openly with the boroughs who participate. But it's something that is low-hanging fruit in terms of trying to reduce the overall burden of PM 2.5 by specifically targeting this black carbon source within the city. So thank you very much for your time. If there's any questions and there's time, I'm happy to take them. Otherwise, Sarah, handing back to you.